So as we get going, my name is Kevin Hennessy, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Brabo Payroll. I'm joined by many of our colleagues, Scott Hokinson, the founder of Brabo, and Brabo Benefits, Kevin O'Keefe, one of the partners on the benefit side, Gabriella, amongst many other people. We can certainly help you with any needs relating to payroll, benefits, or human resources. And we can also help you to acquire private plans in lieu of the state option. And we're going to cover how the paid family medical leave law is going to take effect on January 1st. We're going to talk about how it's going to impact your lives and the lives of your employees. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to John.
All right, thank you so much. And we're excited today to be talking about paid family and medical leave, specifically in Massachusetts, but just in general too. Why is all this activity happening? My name is John Robinson and I'm from the Hartford. I've actually been at the Hartford for over 20 years, worked in claims for a big share of that. So I have a really good understanding about how we do what we do and why we do it. And then for the past 6 years, been working really closely with employers and brokers out there in the marketplace, talking about the importance of absence programs and just really working as more and more states are adding paid family and medical leave, and additionally to all the other leave activity that's happening, and really working with employers to hear what they need and how we can bring some solutions to the table to help them. So make some good recommendations today, hopefully give you some best practices to be thinking about, and also give you some food for thought as you're out there and getting ready for Massachusetts and Connecticut and all of the other states that have or will be having paid family medical leave. I always like to start out and say, you know what, I know I sound like an attorney, but I'm not one. So it is really, really important. And here is your first takeaway of the day. Gone are the days that an employer can say, we don't need a handbook. You need a handbook. If you have one, get it out, update it. If you don't have one, create one, and then communicate it with your employees. So create, update, communicate that handbook. It is really important. It really needs to become your Bible. And as more and more states are adding paid medical and family leave, as ADA is becoming much more prevalent out there in the marketplace, it is really important for smaller employers to remember you need it. It needs to outline your plans and your programs, and you need to make sure your employees know about it. So use those legal advisors, tax advisors, financial accounting advice, get that all in your handbook so that it is clearly wrapping around all of your HR and benefits policies. Today, we're going to talk about paid family and medical leave, why everything is happening, what it is and what it isn't. Talk about some of the challenges that employers are going to be facing, and then I'll also offer some tips and traps. So why is this happening? And I always like to say, when we look at this map, the United States is the only industrialized country in the world that is not guaranteeing specifically some paid family leave around parental leave. So you can see all the dark blues, our neighbors in Canada, a lot of Europe and Asia, they're all offering 52 weeks or more. And then many are offering 26 to 52 weeks. The United States is the only one in red. So because of the fact that we're missing that piece, that is the reason that we're seeing so much activity. We're all familiar with FMLA, and I know smaller employers under 50, you haven't had to deal with FMLA, but as more and more states are adding on this paid medical and family leave, all these terms that organizations with more than 50 employees have been living with and breathing for the past many years since 1993 are on your plate too. Job protected leave, eligibility periods, waiting periods. How long are we providing coverage? All of these things have become important. But the key thing about FMLA is it is unpaid leave. So because it's unpaid, that's where we've got this huge gap, right? So that's where the states are jumping in and they're saying, hey, you know what? We're hearing from our folks who live in our states. They want coverage. Being out on leave, being out on medical leave, family leave is expensive, and there isn't any coverage, and it's putting our constituents at risk. Now, we know FMLA is out there. And with COVID, there's been a lot of activity around FMLA, right? But hey, we've got 2 drug companies saying they've got vaccines. We've got another company saying they've got the cure. So who knows what's going to happen as a new president takes office. So there's a lot of push and pull, and what's happened right now with family medical leave is going to be sunsetting, right? So don't count on that to be continuing to be paid. And I'm going to put a dollar that it's not going to be. So the states are stepping up. They're throwing their hats in the ring. And what's happening there is really what we're all struggling with today. Why are we all talking about it? Well, because even with all of this legislation, all of this activity, we still have less than 50% of employers who are outsourcing absence management. And I look at all of this activity, I'm out here, I'm talking about it all the time, and I say, how is it that employers continue to feel that they are able to manage all of these requirements? And you've got ADA and FMLA and Massachusetts paid medical and family leave, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. I mean, all of this activity is happening, and yet we still hear from brokers, well, a lot of employers are taking this back in house. They think they can do a better job. And I'm like, anyone who thinks that Stacy and Darcy can do a better job in HR and benefits managing what's happening right now, they really need to be paying attention to the websites and hearing the fines. Stacy and Darcy can't do it. They can't even keep up with the intermittent leave that's in existence right now through FMLA. How are they going to do it in a multi-state environment, or even in Massachusetts paid medical and family leave where it's now paid? Managing frequency and duration and certifications and recertifications and keeping it all private. They can't do it. So how do we impress upon employers that now is the time to be thinking about outsourcing that leave? Look at this map. There's over 700 pieces of legislation out there right now. 9 states, including the District of Columbia, have implemented some form of paid medical and family leave. And we know Pennsylvania is a governor's signature away. And oh yeah, Colorado passed it on referendum 2 weeks ago. So what does that mean? That means that the people in the state of Colorado have said, hey, government, get your act together. We want paid medical and family leave. Get it done. So these are the things that employers are grappling with. So understanding the ins and outs and who's got legislation and who doesn't, and also how it's changing, because that's another thing a lot of employers forget. It's not just, hey, California has it, right? And California has a very strong program, right? It's changing all the time. The governor of California has requested sweeping changes of California paid family leave and California statutory disability, paying upwards of 100% with no limit. The state of New Jersey just changed their plan. The state of New York is updating their plan for 1/1/2021. So it's not just when it goes into effect, it's continuing to evolve and change. So keeping abreast of all of that information and everything that's changing is really, really hard. And then understanding what's out there, right? Paid family leave, paid medical leave, paid sick leave. All 3 of these things are happening right now. Paid family leave, taking care of a sick family member. Paid medical leave, that's just the old statutory disability, right? I know it's new in Connecticut and Massachusetts, but us here in New York, we've had it for years. So, and then marrying it together is when you get paid medical and family leave. And then there's paid sick leave. And that's the one that we get the phone calls on all the time. Oh my God, New York City, Pittsburgh, Cook County. Paid sick leave is another whole other animal, right? But when we're sitting there and we're talking about all of this, I always like to say, for the employer, the cost of paid family leave, even in Massachusetts, is the employees, right? The cost of paid sick leave, well, paid sick leave is an accrued benefit based on what the employee is working. So again, made up by an employee contribution. So when we talk about all of this leave, I always like to point out it's really not about the money, right? Because they're normally funded programs paid for by the employee. It's about the time, right? Because maybe you are an under 50 employer who never had any job protected time. Well, now you do. And guess what? People are going to take it. And even if you're an over 50 employer who had FMLA in your old world, 12 weeks. Well, now as everything is running and overlapping and running concurrently, and states are adding additional time, you're talking about a case where in an old world, you might have been out 6 or 8 weeks to have a baby. Now, mom's going to be able to be out 22 weeks, 24 weeks, job protected and paid. So, how an employer is managing that is so important, and understanding that and running their own programs concurrently with it, and understanding how FMLA is overarching around everything is really, really important. And then, like I said, communicating all that to the employees, making sure they understand it is important. And when we're talking about time, so when we think about what's important when you're managing time, the most important thing is how are you going to be helping those employees to get back into the workplace? Because it's job protected time. They're coming back to work. So the best way to manage that is with a great return to work program, right? You're safely and quickly returning people to work. You've got programs in place that are going to facilitate that. The best way for any employer to remain compliant around all of these laws, FML, ADA, paid medical and family leave, is return to work. What are you doing to get them back into the work? And it's now job protected time. They are coming back to work. So how are you going to facilitate that quickly and safely? Very, very important. So we are hearing what the employers are saying, right? 40% of employers anticipate difficulty over the next few years with all of this statutory activity. Half employers say they are unprepared. 47% cite two critical reasons. Number one, lack of internal bandwidth, because it's only Stacy and Darcy now, right? Those HR departments are really, really small. As we're focusing in harder on those smaller employers, they don't even have HR departments. So who's trying to manage all of this? And lack of internal expertise. So we have employers saying there's no internal expertise, and yet they're trying to manage it themselves. And we know baby boomers are retiring at about 10,000 a day. So retaining that institutional knowledge, and especially in HR and benefits, is really important. And a lot of employers are missing the boat there. And one of the key things that I always point out, you know your workforce, right? I mean, if you're a blue collar workforce, primarily male, probably not so concerned about parental leave, and especially if the average age is 45. But caregiver leave, that's something that you might want to be thinking about, and especially if you have a lot of baby boomers working for you. So understanding your workforce dynamics and instituting programs that are going to help that, really, really important. And the other thing, outsourcing, really. And I call it co-sourcing. It's not really outsourcing, right? Because leave, ADA, the employer has a key role in that. So, but using a vendor to help manage this and become that single source of truth for you is really, really important as well. Because when you've got HR and benefits, or hey, you're trying to do this yourself as a small business owner, and you've got state mandated programs, you've got ADA, maybe you've got FML, and they're all out there and none of them are touching each other. And you've got to call all over the place to get information, and nothing is running concurrently, and nobody's getting a consistent message, least of all your employee. That confusion is going to cause a lot of problems. So thinking about, hey, who's somebody that we can partner with who's going to keep us up to date on everything, who's going to really manage our plans in accordance with what we've put down. And hey, we trust that they're really going to be doing everything consistently and compliantly every single time so that we have that single source of truth. Really, really important. So let's talk a little bit more about paid family leave and what it is. Typically provides time for an employee to care for a sick family member, bond with a newborn, take time to bond for adoption, and military. Also, the length of leave varies by law, typically a set amount of time. So, like in New York, we're moving up to 12 weeks. Massachusetts is going to have another level. Connecticut is going to have another level. Some programs may vary by the amount of time available, family versus medical. Massachusetts does. And benefit amounts also varying state to state. So you're hearing, right? Everything's different state to state. That is going to be challenging. And then we've got paid sick leave. Okay, so paid sick leave versus paid family leave, they're two totally different things. Paid sick leave commonly requires an employer to provide sick leave for an employee's own condition and maybe to care for a sick family member, but is based on accrued time. Paid family leave is like an insured type benefit. Once you become eligible, all of the time is available to you. Versus paid sick leave, you're accruing that time based on your working. And normally, paid sick leave is best managed by your payroll vendor because it really is something that should be running in lockstep with your sick time, vacation, PTO policy. So keep that in mind. When you're seeing activity around paid sick leave, what's the best solution that's going to be helping the employer manage that? What's the best solution to get to the employees? And that really is to lockstep it in with what's going on with attendance and payroll. Now, there are day one solutions out there. The Hartford has one. We'll do everything, right? Just call the Hartford. Sick, vacation, all this other legislated activity, the employer's own plan, just call the Hartford. It's great. Certainly, there's a cost associated with that, never free. But at the end of the day, for some employers, that again, that single source linking everything together is a great way to be managing so that you can consistently and compliantly apply all your HR and benefit rules and regulations. So we've talked about paid medical leave. Why is this happening? Most workers, especially low income workers, do not have access to adequate paid leave to deal with their own serious illness. Number one, it really is geared towards lower pay. Hospitality, retail, food workers, maintenance. Those lower workers are the ones who are truly going to be benefiting from these programs. And those lower paid workers are traditionally the ones who, when they can't work, they're going out and then they're going on public assistance. So they're really impacting the economy and where they live from a social benefit perspective. Paid medical leave can also help fight substance abuse. A lot of people who are struggling with opioid, they need money. They're trying to work because they have to get money. And because there's no paid leave programs, they can't even take time off to recover. And that continues the cycle. So understanding that FMLA is not paid and millions of America are facing severe economic pressure if they do not work, that really is the reason that the states have said, hey, we need to make a change. 1 in 3 adults over 65 are going to have at least one chronic health care condition. 1 in 3 seriously adults use up all or most of their savings to deal with that. Nearly 25% of the seriously ill are unable to pay for basic necessities like food, heat, and housing. Bankruptcies are increasing. In order to deal with loss or reduction of pay while on leave, workers resort to drastic measures, dipping into savings, not paying bills, borrowing money, and relying on public assistance. So, with these programs, there really is a social need. We're really focusing in on the lower paid. And the other piece that we're really looking at is equal access, right? Gone are the days that employers are going to be able to say, we're only going to be giving these programs for salaried employees. We'll let the union worry about the union employees. Not going to work that way anymore. Gone are the days that you can say, hey, dads, we're going to give moms programs, but we don't really think fathers should take time off. Not going to work anymore. Equal access, equal benefit. Those are the two things these statutory programs are really aiming to fix. So employers need to be thinking about those things as well as they're moving forward and trying to create programs to dovetail around that. So your own employer sponsored types of plans like parental leave programs, like caregiver leave programs, like student loan programs. When you're putting all of these things in place, you have to be thinking about equal access and equal benefit, because if you don't, you're going to get sued. And that's the other thing to remember. That non-compliance is huge. So we already know the Department of Labor oversees FMLA. They're out there, right? They're taking action all the time. The EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, oversees ADA, Americans with Disability Act. They also extremely active. Over 26,000 reviews last year in 2019 and over $30 million in fines. So if you're working with an employer or you are an employer down to 15 lives, if you're not taking the ADA legislation seriously, you're going to get sued. And now with all this state legislation happening, the one thing when you're talking about federal laws, ERISA's always out there too, right? And ERISA provides some protection around those crazy lawsuits, right? But in state court, all bets are off. So you get in front of a judge, possibly a jury, you're a mom, you've been struggling, had a very complicated pregnancy, your employer gave you a hard time throughout the entire process, didn't let you know about paid medical and family leave, didn't do anything around ADA. You know what a judge or jury in Boston is going to say to that, right? They're going to say $1 million. So the understanding the liability that is associated with these programs is really, really important. Doing it consistently and compliantly every time. Equal access, equal benefit, really important. The average cost to defend a lawsuit, $78,000, and the average verdict currently is about $400,000. So that's $500,000 for just one lawsuit. And a smaller employer, that's going to hurt. It hurts bigger ones too, but it's really going to hurt a smaller employer. So you need to be doing things consistently and compliantly. And that, again, is another great reason to be co-sourcing, getting that single source of truth, consistent, compliant application of all the laws, and bringing everything together. Because even a large cosmetics company comes forward and they say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we want to be the employer of choice. We want people to come to work here. We got a great parental leave program. They gave moms 6 weeks, they give dads 2. The very first father sued them and won over $1 million. The very first father. Equal access, equal benefit. That's what you're looking at. Need to remember that. There's a whole bunch of requirements too, right? So we've talked about getting that handbook updated. It's really, really important. We've talked about, hey, single source of truth, very, very important. Return to work programs, have them, use them. The best way to be compliant is getting people back into the workplace. Now, let's talk about what does the employer have to do when they're trying to manage these things themselves, when they're trying to answer questions around them, because everything's different. Probationary periods and reasons for use and changing employee landscape and calendaring and eligibility. Understanding all of this is really, really complex. And if you're trying to do it yourself, even a piece of it yourself, right? Because, oh yeah, we outsource that Massachusetts paid medical and family. I'm not worried about that. Okay, but how that dovetails with the FML, that's important. And Stacy and Darcy are doing the FML. It's leave. So understanding that FMLA allows one of 4 separate calendaring methods. Which one's the best for your organization based on where you work? And oh yeah, Massachusetts is saying we're going to use a calendaring method that's looking forward every time somebody reports a claim. really looking to give people full amount of coverage every time they report a claim. Well, if your FMLA calendar is measuring backwards and your Washington state calendar is measuring backwards, but your Massachusetts calendar is measuring forwards, who's doing that? That means you have to have two calendars for every employee in Massachusetts, one for FMLA and one for Massachusetts paid medical and family leave. And then we know paid sick leave's out there too, right? So paid sick leave is happening, and how does that accrue, and how does that roll over, and what are the rules for usage around that? So understanding all of that and putting it together and making sure it's in that handbook, it's important. Medical certification. These laws do not allow employers to get very much, right? We know FMLA, it's pretty much the doctor signs you out. And Massachusetts paid medical leave is going to be about the same. But if you are managing ADA, and ADA allows you to get a ton of information. And then we've got Stacy and Darcy, and they're saying ADA, FMLA, it's the same. We're just going to ask for that same information. You can't do that. The laws have requirements about what you can get and what you can ask for and who can ask for it. ADA allows a frontline leader to call and have a discussion with the doctor, but FMLA, it's absolutely forbidden. So Stacy and Darcy are dropping all their work on Scott, and Scott's as a front end leader, he's just making calls to the doctor and trying to get information. Well, guess what? He can't do that for FMLA. Boom, interference. That's a lawsuit. Doing it consistently and compliantly matters. Understanding what's allowed for each one of these coverages, even though they're interlocked, it's important. How can you be prepared? You want to understand the funding. Fully insured ASO, what are we going to be doing? Who's confirming the eligibility? In New Jersey, the state of New Jersey is the final word on eligibility. You cannot deny it unless you go to them first. Important dates and deadlines. When do we have to put up the posters? When do we need to notify the employees? When do we need to go through elections in Massachusetts? When do we have to start taking deductions? So all of these things and dates, they matter. And then what are you doing in regards to the solvency of the fund? New York State has taken an increase every single year. New Jersey is always insolvent. So what's going to happen in that situation? Employers need to be prepared. Employers need to be monitoring it. Like I said, right, it's not just it went into effect. You need to continue to pay attention. And then if you have that multi-state workforce, what are you doing about that? Because it's going to be different in every single state, every single time. I always like to say the best thing an employer can do really in your handbook, have examples. If you work in New York, this is how it works. If you work in California, this is how it works. If you work in Massachusetts, this is how it works. Because that is easy to explain and easy to understand for the employee. And there's a lot of other common issues out there. Few big ones. Definition of a covered family member. FMLA is very clear. Child, spouse, parent. But New York, child, spouse, grandparent, grandchild, domestic partner, in-laws, all covered. So what does that mean? So Bob's in New York and he goes out and he spends some time. He takes 12 weeks because he's caring for his grandfather. Then he comes back to work and he's in an accident and now he needs to take more time off. And Stacy and Darcy are like, hey, man, you used all your time. Guess what? No, he didn't. He still got his full FMLA allotment out there because FMLA does not recognize a grandparent. Understanding that is really, really important. Communicating it, consistently and compliantly applying it. Probationary periods. FMLA, you need to work a year, 12 months, 12 to 50 hours. New York State, 6 months. The state of Massachusetts is looking about 15 weeks. So what does that mean? A person in Massachusetts is going to become eligible for paid, for paid medical family leave before they become eligible for FMLA. But then they're going to become eligible for FMLA too. And then they're going to have that 12 weeks as well. Understanding how that works, calendaring it, communicating it, really, really important. Reasons for use. They are very similar to FMLA, but they all have different payouts. New York State, 67% to about $1,300. We know already Massachusetts, 80% to a max of 850. Connecticut is looking at 100% to a max of 1,000. So these are all different payouts. So when you're dealing with that multi-state workforce, they're all going to be earning different types of dollars while they're out on leave. Make sure it's in your handbook. Get it updated. Use that single source of truth. Co-sourcing, using the same vendor who can put it all together for you, really adds a lot of value to an employer. One, from a, hey, we know it's getting done consistently and compliantly, but also that all of the reporting and tracking that is necessary is going to be there as well. It is really important. So let's talk a little bit more about Massachusetts paid family and medical leave. So beginning on January 1st, covered individuals are going to be entitled to 20 weeks of paid medical for serious health condition, 12 weeks of paid family leave for bonding, 12 weeks of paid leave for qualifying exigency, and 26 weeks to care for a family member who is service. And then on July 1st, covered individuals are going to be entitled to 12 weeks of paid family leave to care for a family member with a serious health condition. Covered individuals are eligible for no more than a combined 26 weeks. So remember, I said it's all about the time. So this is way more than the 12 weeks that FMLA is providing, right? Significantly more. And then those benefits, 80% of wages up to 50% of the statewide average weekly wage. Now the state's going to have to publish that. 50% of wages above the 50% of the state average weekly wage, not to exceed $850. Who's going to understand that? I barely understand that. So at the end of the day, using examples, showing employees what they may be eligible for is really important. But there's a lot at stake. And that's where I like to say, hey, you know what? You want to review your current paid sick time and PTO practices. I know a lot of employers have made that move and it's in PTO, but you know what? With all of this activity out there, all of this new extra time that's being legislated, and then paid sick leave on top of it, maybe the thought is to go back to that old vacation and sick. Because when you are accruing paid sick leave and your employer has a PTO policy, guess what? That time's going in a PTO bank. The employee can use it whenever they want. So going back to the old sick leave does allow the employer to manage that a little bit more effectively. Training. Training is important. Understanding the ins and outs of all of these programs and how they work and who can ask what, when, and how, important. You want to be working with a vendor who's going to be able to help you with training, getting in front of HR and benefits, getting in front of frontline leaders and letting them know what their role is in the entire process. Hey, getting in front of employees as well. Like I said, update, change, and communicate, right? Those are update, create, and communicate. Those are rules to be living by when you're talking about these employee manuals. You want to make sure that employees read and understand. So training is important. So please take that really seriously. Like I said, it is my number one takeaway. I put together a side-by-side comparing FMLA to Massachusetts paid medical and family leave. And it really, FML is very well defined on eligibility and who gets what and how long they get it for. And most of the state programs, they're leaning more towards FML, right? ADA, not defined. Extended periods of time, extended coverages available. So those are all things that the employer needs to grapple with. And like I said, in your orbit right now, in your absence orbit, ADA is out there. Paid medical and family leave is out there. FML is out there. So understanding how they all intertwine with your own plans is important. I think a side-by-side grid works. So when we talk about covered employers, they have 50 more employees within a 75-mile radius, and all government employees are covered by FMLA. In Massachusetts, employees covered by the state unemployment insurance law, except public insurance. So public sector employees can opt in, but they're not automatically covered in Massachusetts. And another key takeaway here, that unemployment insurance law is really, really important. In this today's world of COVID, where a lot of people are working at home and maybe working in Connecticut, maybe working in New Hampshire, but reporting into Mass, at the end of the day, what the courts are going to be following, and I'm letting you know just based on New York and New Jersey, where that employee's unemployment insurance is being paid. So if that employee is on a Massachusetts payroll with Massachusetts unemployment insurance being paid, then that employee is eligible for Massachusetts paid medical and family leave. Employee eligibility, 12 months, 1,250 hours, working for an employer with 50 employees within a 75-mile radius. That's FMLA, very defined, right? Massachusetts is going to say workers must have earned a minimum amount, currently about $4,700, during the base period and must meet an earning requirement tied to the worker's average earnings. That in effect means the worker must have worked about 15 weeks. So that's significantly lower than 12 months, right? New York State, 6 months. So it really is getting folks into the system a lot sooner. That covered reason, FMLA, employee serious health condition, family serious health condition, bonding, military, injured, excuse me, injured service members. Massachusetts paid medical and family leave is going to be the same. So very, very similar, but the definition of a covered family member is significantly different. Like I said, FMLA is recognizing spouse, child, parent. Massachusetts, family member includes worker spouse, domestic partner, child, parent, parent of a spouse or domestic partner, grandchild, grandparent, sibling. And remember, the Massachusetts law around domestic partner is pretty flexible, and they're not going to require any proof. So with that sibling addition, you're far and above even what New York State is doing. So there's going to be a lot. And hey, guess what? For those of you with employees in Connecticut, Connecticut is going to recognize anyone you feel should be considered a family member. So that could be your neighbor down the street. Get ready. It's getting harder and harder. Consistent and compliant is going to become a task for any employer. The employee's leave obligation. The eligible employee right to leave of absence for covered reason is nearly unqualified. And that's the same as Massachusetts, right? I said they're very, very similar. Pretty much the doctor just saying you're out. That's going to make it harder to manage. So a good old-fashioned short-term disability plan out there wrapping around everything is going to be the way to try and manage all of the activity that's happening. Those benefits, just like FMLA, health insurance benefits need to stay in effect. Well, we already know Stacy and Darcy do a terrible job at that, right? So having a resource available that can help collect that money is important. Duration, FMLA, 12 weeks. Massachusetts is going to say 20 weeks in any benefit year, family leave up to 12 weeks in any benefit year to a total of 26 weeks. So significant expansion over FMLA. Job protection, right to restoration to same or equivalent position. Massachusetts is going to be the same. Like I said, it's all about return to work. What you are doing to help employees stay at work and return to work is key to being compliant. Weekly benefit amount, none for FMLA, right? It is unpaid. The employer can pay it if they want, but it is unpaid. Massachusetts, we've already talked about that very strange benefit calculation. And don't worry, other states are equally as strange, like the state of Washington, but maximum $850. And like I said, those lower paid workers, they're the ones who are going to be getting that. They're going to be getting the full amount, right? They're not going to be capped at a max. and the waiting period for coverage. So in FMLA, benefits commences on the 4th day. Massachusetts, there is a 7-day unpaid period. So benefits commence on the 8th day, except for maternity. And maternity is day 1. So this is a significant expansion of coverage. There's some key differences between FMLA and Massachusetts paid medical and family leave. Understanding that and communicating that is really, really important. So I also have some questions very specific to Massachusetts. I thought let's take some time to go through them. So, and we may have already talked about it a little bit, but we'll delve in a little bit deeper. So eligibility, in-state, out-of-state. If an employer has an employee that is out of state and then transfers to a mass facility of the same employer, does the employee have to wait to become eligible for mass paid family medical leave? Yes, they do. The employee would need to be an active mass employee and meet the mass PFML eligibility rules before becoming eligible for benefits. Now, I've worked for the Hartford for 20 years in New York. I take a transfer over to Boston. I do not automatically get that coverage. I have to meet that eligibility requirement. Employees working at home. How do you determine eligibility for employees who work at home? If the employee is working at home in mass, not an issue, right? They're going to be eligible. But an out-of-state employee, unless they're being paid on a Massachusetts payroll and Massachusetts unemployment insurance, then they would not be eligible for Massachusetts paid medical and family leave. So follow the unemployment insurance. That is going to be the key. There's a lot of other, well, do they normal course of business and all of these other things, but really and truly, the state, and this is based on experience, guys, the state is going to say, where's that unemployment insurance paid? So if it's not being paid in mass, then they're not going to get Massachusetts paid medical and family leave. Can the time be taken intermittently? We talked about this. If an employee knows that they need to be out of work every Monday for, let's say, 3 months straight to take care of a paid family member, would they qualify to use paid family leave, and how would that benefit work? Intermittent leave is allowed in as little as 15-minute increments, and employees would be paid based on average weekly wage and average hours worked. So, very different from New York. New York only allows full day increments. So they really are not promoting intermittent leave and less than a full day. And FMLA allows it down to the minute. So managing that, understanding where you're doing business, communicating that is really, really important. Is self-insurance allowed? So can a group self-insure? And if so, what is the surety bond? Yes, and the state would be determining the amount of the surety bond needed on an employer by employer basis. So it is allowed. I would assume based where we are right now with Massachusetts, if you haven't already been approved, you're not going to be for an ASO plan. But still, the option is out there. Each tax ID needs its own self-funded exemption. We've been running into that. Well, my employer has 4 FEIN numbers. All 4 of them need to be registered. What calendar method are we using? We already talked about this too. How is that 52 weeks defined? Calendar year, effective date of coverage, rolling. So the state of Mass is going to use that 52 weeks rolling forward from the Sunday prior to the first day of Massachusetts PFML. So one, calendaring is important, and calendaring is hard. And when you're using that rolling forward method, and I've been out there and talked about this a million times, and I have partnered with many attorneys actually in discussions. Some attorneys are saying, hey, you know what, employer, you're going to end up giving them the time anyways. So just use the rolling forward method. It's the easiest one to use to make sure the employee is getting their full allotment every single time. Now, the insurance company is going to say, measure backwards. You can stop stacking. But either method is fine. The only thing you have to really work on is, where are we doing business? Where do we have the most impact? If it's Massachusetts, then we should be changing our FMLA to rolling forward too. And then that way, you don't have to run all of these calendars for people, right? Because everything's going to be on that rolling forward basis. Understanding that is the most important thing. And then managing it and communicating it to your employees also very, very important. Is employer reimbursement allowed? So if the company has a plan where they are paying 100% of their wages, can they get reimbursed? And yes, if it is 100% salary continuation, then the paid family leave would not be paid during this time because the employee is getting paid, but they should still file the claim because, like I said, it's about the time, right? You want them to be using up those weeks, and the employer can request the reimbursement as well during that same time period. Monitoring it, working with a vendor who's going to make sure that all this is tracked accurately, important. And certainly make sure that the documents detail that PFL would run concurrent to company offered salary continuation periods. What goes into the definition of earnings? We've heard this one a lot too. Commissions, overtime, extra compensation, are they all included? Yes. Massachusetts is going to recognize total earnings, which includes all earnings the employer receives from the last 4 of 5 completed quarters prior to the leave. So just assume it's in there. Use of sick and vacation time. Are benefits payable if the employee is using sick, PTO, or vacation? No. If they are using any of these, PFL is not going to pay. And Massachusetts paid medical and family leave is not going to allow an employer to force an employee to use that time. So FML does allow it, but Massachusetts is not going to. So again, explaining, understanding the voluntary nature of that, the reimbursement option that's out there, those are all things that employers are going to need to be explaining to their employees. And job protection is going to continue. So if that claim is reported, even though the employee might be using PTO time, that job protection is going to continue just like FMLA. 1099, miscellaneous employees. So are we required to offer benefits to independent contractors, those 1099 miscellaneous employees? And no, it says 1099 covered contract workers are required to be covered if they represent more than 50% of the employer's workforce. If they make up 50% or less, they can opt into the coverage, but the employer does not have to offer them the coverage. So we also have some additional resources. I really promote these. Everyone, like I've said today, FMLA and the Department of Labor and ADA and the EEOC, they're all wrapped around everything that is happening. Go out to their websites, take a look. They have a ton of tools and understanding and information. Make sure to use Ask Jan. Ask Jan is a totally free service, quasi-government agency. Employers can be calling and saying, hey, I need help building a return to work program. We haven't ever updated our job descriptions. We need assistance, guidelines, return to work programs. Even if the employer has a very challenging request for an accommodation, Jan can help. Please use Jan. Disability Management Employer Coalition, DMAC, is a great resource. I know we've talked again how at the end of the day, a lot of employers are saying, hey, we don't even have the bandwidth. We don't even have the knowledge to run our HR departments anymore. DMAC can help with that. Tons of great industry information, and they have a supervisor and HR benefit training program. You get a nice certificate from that, and certainly a great way to just be utilizing DMAC to help be ready for what's going on. And if you're a Hartford customer, we can actually get that program for you for free. So just reach out to your Hartford representative. And DMAC, like I said, tons of industry information and white pages and podcasts, very geared towards HR and benefits and helping employers to understand. What happened there? The other thing, the Hartford has a great website as well. So please go to the Hartford's website. It's available to everyone. Bookmark it. Lots of great information there. Also podcasts and white pages really helping employers to really understand what's out there. We have a grid by grid overview for all the states that have paid medical and family leave. So it's a great resource. And I also love A Better Balance. So abetterbalance.org, tons of industry information out there. They also have a really powerful grid that goes and really breaks down all this paid medical and family leave activity in a very granular detail, broken down by state, but a great resource, and also constantly posting things that are really out there to help employers better understand what's going on with paid medical and family leave and how that is impacting them in their individual state. So we've talked about the administration of the state mandated plans and how burdensome it is. Certainly updating that handbook, making sure you're creating, updating, and communicating. Understanding the different trouble spots, right? Probationary periods and benefits amounts and benefit periods and difficulty in tracking and calendaring methods. Training and how important that is. Understanding employer plans and FMLA and state plans and how they work together, and considering that outsourcing for that single source of truth, because running them all differently is not going to get you the best result from an administration perspective, and it's also not going to be the best experience for your employee. And then certainly knowing there's a significant amount there activity out there at the state and municipal level. It's going to continue. So really be thinking of partnering with a vendor who can continue to keep you consistent and compliant and be monitoring all the changes and implementing those as they're going into effect and how they impact your programs. So we're coming right up against the hour, so I'll turn it back over to the folks at Brabo. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
Absolutely excellent presentation, John. There was very limited questions, guys. If anybody has any questions, please post them in the Q&A section. One of the questions that we got from Nancy Armstrong, will you be making this slide deck available? I can tell you that I know we will be posting the recording of this on our YouTube channel. So as far as the slide deck, John, is it something that you guys keep internal, or do you send this out?
You know what? I'll get that out to you. All right. I'll get that out to you today. So you can send that out to all the attendees. I'll get that out to you today.
Very nice. Cool.
Yep.
And then another question was, we have been paying into ADP FMLA and agency is covering it. Will employees pay? I'm not sure I understand that question.
I think that's the employer, the agency is the employer. So I answered that question to say that most of our employers are having the employees pay their portion. A few of our employers are paying the whole tax on behalf. But I guess my question, Dan, is does that change the benefit at all? Like to a taxable benefit if the employer pays the whole portion? Does that change it to a taxable? Does it change the receipt of the claim in any taxable way if the employer pays the whole tax for them?
So I'll jump on this one quickly. Two things. We are still waiting for the state of Massachusetts to give us some tax guidelines. But let's use what other states are doing as a guideline. So for paid medical leave, absolutely. If the employer is paying the full portion, that is taxable income. It is third-party sick pay. IRS regulations apply. You're not going to get out of that. Now, are there some tricks? Yes, and these tricks aren't for kids. But at the end of the day, plan on, if you're paying it as an employer, it will be taxable. On paid family leave, really and truly, paid family leave is not third-party sick pay. So other states are really saying, hey, it doesn't matter how it's paid, it is taxable income. So, but we're waiting for the state of Massachusetts to come back and say how they're going to treat it. The IRS has not really said too much about it. New York and New Jersey are doing it the same and saying you're getting a 1099 and that's it. But we are currently waiting for Massachusetts to come back and tell us this is what we're going to do, so that we can kind of lockstep with that. So Paid family leave, not so sure, but absolutely paid medical leave. If you're paying for it, employer, it's going to be taxable income.
Thank you.
Right. Some of the other questions, Lynette, who owes us a call back. What is considered 50 employees, both full-time, part-time, full-time equivalent, and is the owner considered an employee?
So let's answer that question first. If the owner is paying himself through payroll, then he is considered to be an employee. All right. So yes, when we're talking about FMLA here, right? So it doesn't even matter for Massachusetts. It only matters for FMLA. But I'm going to say that the Department of Labor is going to be looking at it more as an FTE perspective. So they're going to come to you and say, okay, we're looking at the whole year and you've been at 55, 53, 48. They're going to come back and look at it more as an FTE perspective. Be safe. If you're on the line, just do it. Just do it.
Agreed. Great job there. Next question. I know you're going to love to answer this one, and I mean that sincerely. Lynette said thank you for that last answer. David Smith, what is the process for an employee to actually file for Massachusetts paid family medical leave? Is it done through the state? Where and when does the employer come into play? I can't wait to hear your response.
So now, from a claims perspective, we're waiting for those final how to file a claim perspective. But if you are in the state plan, absolutely, Massachusetts has created a whole program, a whole department to manage these claims. Just FYI, everyone, they're going to be really, really far behind. So we already learned with the state of Washington, when you talk about New York and New Jersey adding paid family leave, we already had the infrastructure, right? We'd been doing statutory disability for years and years and years. It was nothing for us to add paid family leave. But Washington, Connecticut, Massachusetts, they've never done it before. They don't even know what they're in for, and they're going to be behind. But yes, the employee is going to need to go to the state. And right now, it looks like the state is going to do a paper option. So you have to go in, complete a piece of paper, and get it back to the state. Where the employer is going to be coming in is then the state is going to come back and they're going to be verifying eligibility with you as the employer, so that you'll be in the know at that point and giving that specific eligibility information. Hey, did they work the amount of quarters and all that? And what is their pay? So that's where the employer is going to come in. If you're utilizing a private vendor, again, the process is going to be similar. It's just you're going to go to the Hartford, and the Hartford will take care of everything. And trust me, we'll do it a lot smoother and quicker.
So just to really reframe that again for all of you guys on here, here at Brabo, we are able to work directly with the Hartford to get you a competitive quote, right? So the Hartford is a private insurance company. So right now through the state, the total rate for any employer that has 25 or more employees, they pay 0.75% total for this program through the state. We can take a census from your company and send it to the Hartford to get a quote that might even be less than what the state option costs. One of the advantages that you would get by doing a private program like this is that the Hartford will be where you're submitting your claim. And we seem to think that the Hartford is going to do a better job adjudicating claims than our government. For anybody that wants to argue that, you should go to your local DMV.
Good. That's a good one. Very good.
We don't have any further questions. John, I think you did a fantastic job informing our clients of this new challenging time that we have ahead of us. I think that map that you showed at the beginning of the slideshow showing us how far behind other countries we are as it comes to paid leave does show the necessity for rolling programs like this out. And it's not really good or bad news. It's just different, and we'll have to adapt. And I think that you've armed us to make good, strong decisions heading into 2021.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed it. And I know we got another session with Brabo coming up, but I thank you everybody for attending today, and good luck, and everybody have a great Thanksgiving.
For those of you that were on our email, we have another session. Same presenter, John, will be on again with us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. If you have any friends that you think could benefit by being a part of this, please share the original email that you received. For myself, Kevin O'Keefe, or Scott Hokinson, thank you so much for joining. Look forward to seeing you guys all soon. Bye.